Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to reconvene our budget meeting from yesterday. So welcome, everyone. The first order on the agenda is planning and economic development. It'll be Joe Gallivan, Richard Allen, and Sonia Bolton. It says here, all three are going to do something, so we'll see. Welcome, Joe.
Yeah, good morning, members of council. We're pleased to talk to you today about our budget for 2025. You also have our business plan, and the business plan has a 5-year vision to it, like the other departments. And I would say to you to start off that what we're asking for today is to start to build the foundation of where we want to go by 2029. So where do we hope to be by the end of this business plan? The KMP trail will be finished. Hopefully it'll start to be connected to other trails. We also expect that's going to bring in more businesses and certainly more tourism. We'll have a new county official plan in place that'll look forward to the next 25 years, a regional plan. Open farms will still be happening and continue to flourish and evolve from what it is today. The housing project in Verona on communal services will be built. It'll be up and running. It'll be the flagship project for us in Frontenac of success. The Charlotte Lake project school site will be well on its way by 2029. And then the community planning permit system, which we don't talk about enough, which is going to be for all 4 townships to protect your waterfront better. That should be in place no later than the early 2026. The doctor recruitment program will be successful, and we'll have at least an additional doctor in Frontenac County by 2029. Having said that, it's our opinion that we still don't have the resources needed to fulfill council's mandate to promote economic development. So we are making a request. Mr. Allen will be presenting it to you shortly with a new funding proposal for a position we talked about last year. So again, the 2 major themes of what we're trying to do across Frontenac is to ensure that land use planning advice we give to you recognizes the rural character of Frontenac, is proactive and progressive, leading rural planning in Ontario, and collaborative with all 4 townships, and also to promote economic development that will benefit our citizens, businesses, and visitors to our region. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Allen. Thank you.
Greetings, Council. My pleasure today to bring to you the 5-year business plan for the economic development side of our department. It's a continuation of much of the work that we do, but as the treasurer mentioned yesterday, a lot of what we do is project-based, and a lot of those projects emerge from direction of council, from the community, what we hear with our business community. And so every year we're evolving and changing in our nature of our business and what we're trying to serve when we're serving our community. There we go. Thank you. So just a bit of context in terms of the region. We still, in terms of Eastern Ontario, when we're looking at small rural communities, counties, I mean, SDNG is pretty big and Leeds Grenville is gigantic. But when we're looking at our region, we are still the least invested in economic development. And I want to point out that many of these counties, their lower tier municipalities also have economic development staff or staff dedicated to economic development. Whereas currently there are some staff in Frontenac County that do economic development. It's not their dedicated function like it is for myself and for Debbie, our community development officer. So our layout, we're a tiny, powerful team. We've been delivering on a number of initiatives over the past 7 years. And our budget is well within the bounds of what other folks are doing in terms of economic development. The other piece in terms of context is the Charter for Economic Development. Council passed this in July of this year. And so you'll start to see much more of this influence, the influence in our business planning process coming in from the Charter and its evolution. And as we go through the business plan today, we'll discuss some of the goals in the charter as they guide us, and I'll highlight some of the projects that are associated with the charter as we move forward, as we plan to move forward over the next 5 years. So speaking about economic infrastructure, we have the goals are to grow and maintain the ambassador community, facilitate small-scale economic activities, healthcare in our community, build support for communal services and broadband access. Generally, what this means is, what is it that we need to do to make sure our economy functions? And that's both from a residential perspective and from a business perspective. The infrastructure that comes from the social infrastructure of our ambassador community has been given to us as a huge connector. Every time we bring businesses together, they go away with new relationships and new opportunities to expand their business. And so we would look to continue doing that, such as at our business retreat, which this year's is taking place next week in Parham. But we're also looking at those things that keep families here. We need to have healthcare. We need to make sure that that's available. And while most of the province is in the same boat as us, there are unique things that we can look at in Frontenac, and where this council has led us and supported the healthcare community in terms of guiding the operational review. And we'll be bringing in 2025 some recommendations from that operational review. It's not a straightforward exercise, and we look forward to council's wisdom in the conversations we have as we move forward on that. The other piece in terms of economic infrastructure is, and I say support for communal services, I really mean that from a commercial standpoint. I think that as we strengthen our ability as the municipality and the Municipal Services Corporation evolve in our approach to communal services and become more able to deliver on it, I think we'd be able to work with developers or other municipalities on creating more commercial or industrial projects that can support our growing businesses or small scale businesses that fit in our community. And I think that we can play a bit of a role in terms of marketing and sales when it comes to communal services going forward. So to highlight, I already spoke about the ambassador program. This is led by the community development officer. Currently, Debbie goes out and meets with 5 to 10 businesses per month. She's been doing that in alignment with Frontenac Business Services. So we're going out together with the team from Frontenac Business Services so that businesses only have to have one conversation with the economic development supports in the region. And they try to meet up with a variety of businesses that have either requested a meeting or checking in with businesses that we've connected with in the past or connecting with new businesses. The other piece is that we send out a weekly newsletter to all businesses. We're currently just under 300 subscribers to that newsletter, and we provide grant information. If there's events or workshops or trainings, we try to include that in the newsletter. We try to keep it digestible, so we don't put more than 5 or 6 items in each of those newsletters, and so we just concentrate on trying to be consistent in getting that out every week. And then the Business Retreat and Awards is highly anticipated. We've got almost 60 registrants for next week's event with a number of workshops, and we've only been doing it for 3 years, but we really feel like it's helping bring a positivity and a celebratory attitude towards doing business in Frontenac, which is over the past few years has been difficult for some businesses to be able to maintain. The next charter pillar we have is food and beverage. It was on the previous charter, so we're continuing to look at supporting food and beverage. Our primary support at the county level for food and beverage has been supporting small scale agriculture through the Open Farms Initiative, and we look to continue doing that. But we also want to work with our partners at Frontenac Business Services on their food and beverage region effort, and so we're looking at combining their investment work on the food and beverage region project to expand it into tourism and strengthening the knowledge and availability of people who are coming to our region. Food and beverage is a huge support when it comes to tourism. People are looking for culinary experiences. They're looking for different culinary experiences. And so they want to have a diversity. They want to know that they can go somewhere for food, and they want to know that they can go to a different place for food when they come visit our region. And so we want to make sure we're able to continue to encourage that. From an agricultural perspective, the other piece that we want to continue to encourage is value-added production, which means taking your products on farm and turning them into processing them in some way to make them a higher value product for resale. And so we think there's lots of opportunity to expand upon that here in Frontenac. So I already spoke briefly about Open Farm Days. We just finished 6 weeks of Open Farm Days in Frontenac, where a number of different farms, farmers markets, restaurants, and local food providers have put together events that supported around promoting local food and agriculture. We do this event in partnership with South Frontenac, Tourism Kingston, and City of Kingston, and we really encourage events to take place throughout the county. This year we had many on Wolf Island because we had the Canadian plowing match this year, and so there was another reason to draw folks out to see and learn about agriculture as part of the Open Farms event. We see this event continuing to evolve, and we see the sort of Open Farms attitude sort of spreading across Frontenac County in a different way, so that we can support farms year round. And maybe look at rejigging how the event supports our farmers and local food going forward. And we'll be bringing those conversations forward to the Planning and Economic Development Committee in the new year. Tourism. So tourism, every time we go out to the business community, tourism is high on the list, especially shoulder season and or winter tourism. We're doing okay in the summer. We do great in the summer, specifically July and August, but all of our tourism businesses would benefit from strengthening and seeing more visitors in a year round. If we continue to have a September like we just had, I don't think that'll be a problem weather-wise. But what we need to do is focus on destination development as per our destination development plan, look at finding ways to connect destinations and experiences throughout our region through not the physical trails, but like through routes that people might have, also called tourism trails, and ensure that our businesses are integrated into the tourism opportunities. So they may not see themselves as a tourism business, but they may be able to capitalize on the tourism that's taking place. And we want to make sure we're strengthening community links to do so. When it comes to the charter, we also have housing. And so housing is new. It's something we haven't contemplated. And honestly, a year and a half ago, we weren't contemplating in Frontenac County, but it certainly was clear in Council's strategic plan and in our conversations with businesses that housing is important. Some of our businesses have let us know that they have difficulty housing employees, or they can hire an employee, but they've got nowhere for them to live that is affordable or fits their family's lifestyle. And so what we need to look at is a holistic approach from an economic development standpoint. We don't want to get into the realtor game. We don't want to get into the situation where we're selling housing. What we want to do is work with our planners to support and strengthen the initiatives that are already underway, and maybe bring housing developers together and hear from them what they need, so that we can then take that feedback back to the various councils and planners that we're working with on a various basis. That's something that economic developers can do, but planners can't, right? So I mean, you can, I guess, but it gets a little sticky. And so that's the role, and we'll sort of see the role of economic development and housing evolve as the charter is quite new, and over the next year, as we look at future business plans, you'll see more growth in this section from us. Looking ahead, we have this regional community improvement program that we've been working on for the last couple of years. And we're gearing it towards some of these ideas in terms of economic infrastructure and housing. So having a community improvement program that might incentivize the creation of rental housing, and commercial spaces, or use of communal services it will have a huge impact in our community. And so we're looking to dedicate a significant amount of time over the next 6 to 12 months to get this program off the ground. Something that's not a pillar, but is something that we do in Frontenac County in our department is write grants and provide funding support to a number of projects. Our goal when we have a project is to not fund it alone. We tend to leverage our resources by seeking grants and driving the Treasury Department crazy. So this year we're closing out a five-year grant with the Investing in Communities infrastructure program, but we also secured close to $200,000 through the Rural Economic Development Program for trails development. We've had a track record of as I say up there, an average of $235,000 of grant funds per year. So I think we're doing a pretty good job at finding partners and or grants to help us fund our projects and launch our projects as they go forward. And so we will continue to do that as part of our regular business practice. Any questions about our business plan for the next 5 years?
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Have you considered doing some outreach to some of the other smaller groups within the community? I'm thinking specifically around educating around the Canada Mortgage and Housing grants and what is available, and that to sort of plant the seed to anything from Rotary groups to church groups, et cetera, that might want to take on projects of 3 and 4 rental housing units, something like that, and just letting them know, because there is quite a bit of help out there right now.
I think your suggestion is quite apt and in line with the getting together with relevant parties who are maybe interested in supporting the growth of housing. I spoke to developers in my presentation, but having a meeting about housing or an education open house might be in the various communities might be something that we can lead and participate in.
Councillor Fowler.
Yes, you were just speaking about the real estate game. Can you explain what you mean by that? We should be getting along with real estate to help attract people here.
Oh, yes, through you, Deputy Warden. I only meant that in some municipalities there can be friction between the realtor community and with the municipality, because the municipality is looking at trying to attract specifically commercial projects to lands, and so it sometimes feels like they're selling the lands instead of the realtors. That's not something we have in Frontenac County that we're worried about. We're not looking at selling houses on behalf of other owners. We'll let the realtors do their job. What we want to do is look at promoting the development and construction of housing that the realtors can then sell.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I have a project proposal, believe it or not. Yeah, as Director Gallivan mentioned, we're bringing back the idea of a community development officer. We're proposing a different financial structure in terms of how we phase in this resource. The work we do is human, it's in person, it's coordinating, it's visiting committees. I go to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I go to the Planning and Economic Development Committee with a number of reports. I come to most council meetings with things. We've started going to committee meetings and task force meetings in the townships and connecting with the townships. and as much as we can do meetings about a specific task virtually, really being there in person is very important. And that, you know, and then with the trail, I love the trail, but we have, you know, we have 4 specific user groups that we coordinate with regularly, two ATV clubs and two snowmobile clubs. And so while we bring everybody together to meet, we still have to meet and communicate with them on a regular basis. And so, and then as I was talking about in my business plan, we're getting back out. We're going to businesses. We're not asking them to come to us. We're going to where their places of work is so they can feel comfortable telling us about their opportunities, their challenges, where they're looking for help, what we can and how we can help work with them. So all of that is really human work, and we want to do more of that. In the destination development plan, there's recommendations around creating a sustainability or a committee or a regenerative tourism kind of committee that understands the impacts of tourism in our region, so that we can plan for and prepare for potential over tourism in some of our lakes or some of our other places. Plan for or monitor ways to keep our region the way it is, as a beautiful natural place for people to escape to. There's also, in terms of housing, if we're doing additional outreach to developers or some of these community groups, again, it's human. We're getting together. And we have to have the capacity to do that, not just here at the county office, but in our communities that we partner with. And when communities have resources in place from a human perspective that are doing economic development, we're connecting with them on a regular basis, and we want to, and we really support that. If you and your townships decide to add an economic development officer or something similar, that's something that we can coordinate with. But at the moment, it's tough for everybody to look at that, and it might be better for us to look at expanding what we do at the county to benefit all of our communities. And so just a little background in terms of the community development officer. We added the community development officer in 2016 with assistance from the RED program. It was a 3-year funding program, and it had it launched a number of initiatives that we now keep going, that are ongoing. The Ambassador program and Open Farms notably, but there were numerous other projects such as our Visit Frontenac website, or we had a ferry by foot program for a little while until things got a little, we didn't want to put anybody on any ferries during COVID, and we had to turn that down. But we might be looking at restarting those kinds of conversations from a tourism and economic development standpoint. When it comes to responsibilities in our department, we continue to grow because we're successful at what we're doing. Our Ambassador program, we've been recruiting new businesses to our Ambassador program on a regular basis. The Open Farms program, we've brought in partners to share the load, but managing and working with those partners requires coordination. That coordination comes from us and our leadership here at Frontenac County. And so that means time coordinating events, reporting back to people, time connecting with things. We know that Open Farms resonates with our community, and we and our partners want to be involved, but they need us to kind of coordinate and tell them where to go. Tourism, we dialed back tourism as we spoke about last year, but it's still important, as I mentioned in my previous presentation. And trails, and well, Director Gallivan says that we will be done the trail. I think he means the construction of the trail, because when I talk about the trail a little bit later, we'll be talking about the economic development opportunities that are starting to grow momentum now that we have a trail that people are coming from across the region. In fact, I just received an email this morning complimenting us on the work that we've done on the trail, and the opportunities that they see for tourism around it. So the Destination Development Plan, a little more background, it was approved by Council in 2022, and there's a list of various initiatives that were outlined in there that we would like to see happen. Specifically, wayfinding and placemaking to help visitors get out of their cottages or their Airbnbs and find our restaurants and our retailers and our public spaces that are incredible, not just our trails, but our beaches and our parks and our campsites. And we want to also look at bringing our arts, culture, and heritage into the types of promotion that we do at Frontenac County. We have a huge underground, not even underground, community of artists and artisans that are spread out in every township. And in fact, we tap that group to create our awards, a unique artistic award every year for our award winners. This year we have an incredible creation from Red Dragon Studio in North Frontenac that we'll be giving to our award winners next week. And so we want to be able to expand on that, but we don't have the capacity to connect and build and grow that right now. And this is why we'd like to be able to bring in additional support. In addition, a new community development officer will help position us to deliver on some of the expanding new things that have come out. Housing, brand new thing that we're talking about. We'd like to do, we want to continue. Having additional capacity means that we'll be able to dedicate more time to it. Healthcare, I would love to say that our job will be done when we bring back a report to you, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And there's going to be recommendations for us just as much as there are going to be recommendations for other partners in the community to look at. And then tourism, we really would like to bring back more attention to tourism and be able to support each of our communities in their approaches to tourism as we go forward. Council's strategic priority too is it speaks to economic development in a big way, and all of the things I've just talked about for the last what time is it? 45 minutes, half an hour. I'm doing great.
Shorter than we're used to?
Yes, exactly. So but all of those things I spoke about are laid out in here in this strategic priority. These are the things that County Council said they wanted to see done, and we want to be able to support council in that effort. And we think we can do that when we have a bit more capacity to deliver on all of those initiatives. And then last year, the Planning and Economic Development Committee endorsed the proposal to add a community development officer. And we just wanted to highlight that. We brought our proposal to the community, the Planning and Economic Development Committee again this year. And they again seemed very supportive of the idea of expanding our capacity to be able to deliver on some of these goals. So last year, and taking on the whole cost of an economic development officer seemed to be a challenge when we had other budget pressures. And in my mind, I don't think we're going to stop having those budget pressures for a few years. And so we went back to our notebooks and we said, okay, well, how can we look at a less impactful way of bringing this economic development officer on board? And so if we spread out the increase over 3 years, then we're able to start the economic development officer in the second year using the second year's funds and the first year's funds, and then we'll have it fully funded in the third year. And so this is how we're sort of proposing to spread the impact of bringing this person on. It also knowing that I might have this resource a year from now will allow me to business plan around that in a clear way. Last year, I planned for it, and then I had to modify my business plan accordingly. So it provides a lot more clarity for all of us about what's coming. So this is how we propose to spread that out. In summary, the community development officers made an impact. We would not have the reputation we do with the business community without the existing community development officer in their role. And we think we can strengthen that in communities that we haven't been speaking to: development, arts and culture, and manage more tourism efforts in terms of marketing. Our Charter for Economic Development, our Destination Development Plan, and Council's priority number 2 all support economic development as a goal that we want to achieve. In Frontenac County, our primary resource for economic development is the team here. We have staff that do economic development. Economic development is everybody's job. In fact, it's council's job. But the folks who are delivering on that are based in our department at the moment. That can change. We want to make sure that we're able to be responsible with our implementation and our promises, and have the capacity to deliver on them. Any questions about my proposal?
Councillor Greenwood Spears. Oh, I thought it was you. You shocked me. Nick, Councillor Gowdy.
Thank you for your presentation and for your passion. I really, really appreciate how dedicated you are to economic development. I just have one question. How much of your time do you dedicate to just maintenance on the trail?
To just maintaining the trail?
Just maintaining the trail, not putting it out for tourism, but just on maintaining.
I would say that probably at the moment, and I'll lump some capital into that too. So building trail, it's about 50% of my job. And so I do, because we have to go through a regular procurement process. We have to provide monitoring. I do a lot less than I used to because we have we've implemented systems for oversight and reporting, and we continue to look at finding efficiencies to understand what's happening out there. In fact, if I may, our partnership with the ATV Club has really reduced my attention because they have trained wardens that are out there every weekend, and I get an email from them every Monday letting me know if there's something of concern. And so I don't have to go out and drive the whole trail myself to find those things. We're getting reports back from our partners. So that's making a big difference in terms of my time dedicated towards it.
Gordon Smith.
Just to be clear, you're asking for 43,000 for 2 years and then hire the person in the 3rd year?
So we're asking for an increase to our budget of 43,000 each year for 3 years. So we would go up by 43,000 in the economic development budget this year, in 2025. We would put that in reserve and save that. Then we would go up again by $43,000 in 2026. So that would be 2/3 in 2026, and then the 1/3 from 2025 could be added to that to support the hiring of a community development officer. However, to operationalize that whole position, we have to go up again in 2027.
So we're actually hiring 3 years from now,
Nope, 2.
2.
Councillor Fowler.
Yes, regarding getting help from the ATV clubs, there's other organizations that are available that can manage the trail for you. And they'll actually pay some money for their people to be able to use the trail. I'm suggesting that the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance would be a good group to approach for assistance in running the trail. They run many trails in Ontario and they do a good job. And if there's a problem with a bridge, they can help you build the bridge too. They've done many and they can repair them as well. I think we should take a closer look at that organization just on that basis alone, that they could help and probably relieve that 50% that you have to dedicate to the trail.
I think that we should look at those things when we're looking at whether we're actually gonna put trail passes. And we're gonna start charging to be on the trail and those other things that we actually haven't tackled yet either. But I think if we're gonna look at charging for a trail pass and all of those things, then I think you should look at options of, okay, how are we gonna maintain it? What are some of these clubs gonna do? Instead of jumping, let's say, from one that's here now
Yeah,
to one that you might, or whatever.
Sorry, I'll let the Councillor Lichty speak and then I can respond.
Okay, Councillor Lichty.
Thank you. Richard, so I'm gonna go back to what Fran was talking about. So it's 43,000 this year. Budget is increased by 43, so we're adding another 43, that's 86,000. And then we'll hire, the intent is to hire the officer or that individual sometime in 2026 based on the amount of money we have, and then the full salary hits with 129,000 in 2027, right?
Yeah, our increase. So our increase to the annual budget increase, so it would be an increase of 43,000 each year from baseline, from where we're at in 2024. We would be adding $43,000 to the 2025 budget. That, from that baseline, we would add 43,000 in 2026. So that's actually an increase from 2024 of 86,000 in 2026. And then we would get to the, and then we add the 43,000 to cover in 2027 to get us over the threshold for an appropriate position with all the benefits that come with it. And so we can combine the 86,000 that we add to our budget in 2026 with the 43,000 of 2025 to be able to hire a person.
So thank you. It's just one follow-up. So the intent of this individual is also to support the townships directly and the economic development throughout all of Frontenac County?
Yeah, we've made a commitment to strengthen our relationships with our communities. We probably won't be able to deliver directly on certain aspects, but we probably can find places where the county's goals and the township's goals are aligned, and we can find projects to do that. In the initial launch of the Community Development Officer in 2016, we set outside our project in each township that was to be led as part of that program. And so they were larger projects, but we might be able to find a way to say, okay, well, what's important in this community and how can we support it? And how can our team be present and available to support those communities? We really see that the value of that communication and that connection building to grow economic development. And we can take the learnings that we have in other communities. So if we see something that's happening in Frontenac Islands that could apply in North Frontenac, we could bring those principles up there with us.
So if I'm understanding this right, the
Mhm.
position, what's it worth? 130 grand, or I'm looking over there, yes, Alec?
So yeah, the total dollar figure on the ask would be $129,000.
Right.
And maybe just to step back on the implications. So year one, there's no service level enhancement. The request is to put $43,000 into the reserve. Year two, the $129,000 position comes on board. We pull out the 43,000 reserve. The net impact of the levy is then 86,000. So 43,000 increase from year before. Year three, the position is still $129,000. Nothing to take out of the reserve. At that point, another $43,000 increase to the levy. But at that point, you've operationalized the position. It's fully on the levy.
So don't anybody take this the wrong way, but when you add a staff person, it's the gift that always keeps on giving. Right? I mean, every position you add comes with all of those costs and it never goes away. So in 2028, somewhere, we're gonna have to come up with 130,000. Because that position is now there. It's still gonna get paid, no matter what, whether you come out with new money, old money, it doesn't matter what. The position is there now. So it's costing the county 130 in 28 till we get up to it. The other part is CFDC is really promoting this. Do they not have a staff person or the resources, or why are they pushing it for us at the county to pay for it?
Yeah, so our CFDC, the Frontenac Business Services, is the smallest of their organizations in Ontario, probably in Canada. It was one of the last ones to be formed, and it was the the population area it serves and the number of businesses it serves is much smaller than the other communities. And how it's funded is based on how much they provide in terms of lending to the business community. So they started with a smaller seed amount than others, and they've had less time to grow their seed amount than the other places. And so their operational capacity is not able to grow without outside support in some way, shape, or form to add additional staff to deliver on things. Their mandate also is slightly different than ours. They support businesses directly in terms of providing advice, but they also are in the business of providing those funds to businesses in order to help them grow in capacity and managing those various files and portfolios that they have. So they're a great partner, and to be honest, like Anne Pritchard, who's been at the helm of that organization for the last 20 years and doing economic development in Frontenac even longer, is an incredible resource to our community, and because she's met with everyone and seen everything from every direction, every council, every piece. They're a great partner, but their ability to expand or grow is very limited based on how they're funded.
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
So it's a 0.33 FTE that's going to be added in if we move forward on this year, and another 0.3 next year, and final 0.3 in the year after. So it's a very pragmatic approach in that, and we've actually added in housing to part of the new economic development, and we approved in 2022 that this is the direction we wanted to go. We just never put the money forward on it. So I think this is a amount that needs to be invested so that we can start to see the returns.
Alec?
Oh, I just want to clarify maybe one point from that. So in terms of the FTE, the actual staffing, nothing added in 25, full position in 26, full position in 27. It's just the cost that's kind of coming in the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Yeah, and if I may, unfortunately, we don't have partners that fund our positions in our department, and we don't have as much in terms of fee for service to recover what we do in our department. We try to make that impact through the grants that we receive for our projects and that we move on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
More? Yep. Sonia Bolton?
You need a and then I have to step back so that I don't sort of face plant into it. No, it's not you. It's good. It's all good. All right. Good morning, members of council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the work plan or the business plan for the next 5 years for the planning services portion of our department. I'm going to speak first about the county projects that we currently have underway or have planned, those that impact us all at a regional level. I'll speak then about some specific key township level projects that we're working on throughout the 4 townships. I'll touch briefly on development approval numbers and currently sort of historically and where we're at now, and then also speak just briefly about some of the unknowns that we always face in terms of our planning work and the impact that has on our resources and our work plans. So first up, in terms of our regional projects, one of the large projects that we have ongoing right now is the creation of a template for a community planning permit bylaw. This is to be focused specifically on waterfront development. And it's again, just as I know we've spoken about it in the past, but it is a special planning tool that allows you to combine zoning, the minor variance process, and site plan control that are under the authority of the Planning Act, and also combine that with a few tools under the Planning Act, such as controlling tree removal and site alteration, making it, an effective and excellent tool for shoreline protection and the protection of our lakes. But it also offers efficiencies in terms of the development approval process, because each township will be able to tailor the bylaw to set up basically a tiered system whereby certain minor approvals can be delegated to staff, and the major approvals would still be in front of their individual township councils or committees. So work on that template is currently underway. We expect it to wrap up in early 2025. And then what will happen is, once the template is complete, the real work begins at the township levels. The bylaw template will be given to each of the townships, where there will be the need for additional community consultation and work to refine it to meet your own needs and to do the mapping. So we anticipate that, helping each of the townships with that implementation work will start sort of middle of next year, and will probably carry on a little bit into to 2026 as well. But it is one of the key projects that we have currently underway. Communal services, we amended our county official plan to provide some guidance with respect to how this new tool should be used. And we are now in the process of going out and having conversations with each of our townships in terms of how you incorporate these policies in your official plans. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a wonderful tool, but the townships have to understand how they want to see the tool be used. So when somebody comes knocking on the door, there are a list of, you call it criteria or parameters for, and situations and scenarios for development that would be acceptable for using communal services. The example we give is somebody has 100 acres and they come in and they say, I want to build 300 houses on 100 acres, but it's nowhere near a settlement area. And it's not something you've anticipated. So we're going to be going out to each of the townships to have that conversation so that you have policies in your official plan to be able to provide you with the tools as decision makers in your townships. So South Frontenac, we've already been working with them, and they are incorporating those policies in their new official plan that's underway. And we actually went out, I believe it was last week, to Central Frontenac to have a conversation with them. In the new year, we'll have start some community consultation with respect to that. Then we'll be going out to each of the townships to do that work. In addition to that, there's ongoing support for the Frontenac Municipal Services Board, and in terms of the technical review, and again, how planning knits into the governance and the operations of communal services. And there's also advocacy work and presentation. So Director Gallivan was at a housing summit in Halliburton last week, and then back in September also presented on our story on communal services at the Ontario East Municipal Conference. So we're continuing to get requests for that, and I see that will probably be some continuing support that we provide going forward. In terms of our county official plan, we are heading into a time where we need to do our 10-year update. So it was adopted by County Council in 2014 and received provincial approval in 2016. So we are working now at the end of this year on putting together a work plan for that, with the goal of updating it by the end of 2026. And as part of that, there is some important background information that we need to be able to do that project. So two key pieces, the first being the natural heritage strategy. So there was already a budget for a project proposal approved by County Council in 2023. So we anticipate putting forward a request for proposal for a consultant for that very shortly to do the majority of the work next year. It will form a cornerstone of the update to the official plan, just because natural heritage is such a huge component of who and what we are as Frontenac County. And there's just, between the interim of getting the budget approval and the issuance of the request for proposal, we've just had delays, unfortunately, with respect to staff workload, but it is something that is at the top of our list for next year. The second piece would be our population, employment, and housing projections. So these were last done in 2020 based on the 2016 census, and it's a body of work that is done every 5 years based on the release of the census data. And the projections, it contain important information for us, for our official plan, about what is happening in our communities, which makes it such a cornerstone piece. And we know that there have been significant changes in our communities since the pandemic. So I will speak further on that. I have a separate project proposal at the end for In addition to those pieces, something else we're going to be looking at for the county official plan are some policies with respect to rural business and home industries. So all of our township official plans have standard policies as well as provisions in their zoning bylaw that promote and allow for home-based businesses. But in the county, we have large rural properties that have the potential for sort of enhanced business opportunities. So the home industry, where it's not just confined to a home office in a house, but it could be something that's happening in a garage or a barn. And so our intent is to, work with our economic development side of our team and develop some high-level policies for the county official plan to give some direction to what those additional opportunities and policies could be. But as always, the details of how that would work would be left up to each individual township official plan to provide more detail on. And that is something that we're intending to work on in-house as sort of time allows. So it would be a project internal for our team. Just as a place marker, as part of our 5-year business plan, this is a future project proposal, maybe 27, 28, but it would be for an archaeological master plan. So the protection of archaeological resources is a provincial requirement. And right now, as staff, we don't feel we have the resources we need to know, unless we tell everybody that they have to do a study, we don't have the information we need about where sensitive resources are or where they could potentially be. And an archaeological master plan would help us be able to scope areas where those detailed studies would be required. So again, it's something that we feel is important, particularly as we continue moving forward with, truth and reconciliation with Indigenous communities and our First Nations partners. So, so it's something we're sort of planting the flag to say that we feel is important. We need the time, obviously, to work it into our work plan and budget for it, but I'm mentioning it now as part of our 5-year work plan. It is something that we would like to see start within that 5-year timeframe. So onto the township projects. So currently, right now, we have a couple of projects that are related or basically involve work that we're doing for all of the townships. So the first would be on additional residential units. So South Frontenac completed amendments to their official plan and their zoning bylaw last year with respect to additional residential units. And it is a topic that the policy landscape for it has changed considerably in the last couple of years because of all of the changes that the province has made in order to try and increase the housing supply. So we are now in the process of working through what those changes would look like for the other townships. And we've had an initial conversation in North Frontenac about doing that work. So we've had an initial report with their council, and we've also met with their economic development task force, who have sort of a housing subgroup. So we are going to be putting forward some future amendments to both the official plan and the zoning bylaw in North, and we see that then trickling down also to Central and to the islands as well. And then I'd already mentioned the implementation of the community planning permit system is something that we'll be helping all 4 townships with. In North Frontenac, looking ahead to, 2027, 2028, it will be time for the 10-year updates to their official plan and their zoning bylaw. So obviously we will be assisting with that when the time comes, along with any sort of preliminary work that is needed, particularly for the official plan update. In Central Frontenac, we are currently working with the township on the redevelopment of the former school site in Sharbert Lake. So we anticipate that is going to continue. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow with their housing committee to discuss a preliminary list of land uses for the site that is needed prior to proceeding with additional technical studies for the site. For South Frontenac, they have been working away at their new official plan. We now have the final draft, which we are in the process of reviewing. So our hope is that by early next year that they have their new official plan in place. After that, we are going to be having conversations with township staff and eventually township council about delegating the approval for plans of subdivision and condominium to the township once their new official plan is in place. Once they have that updated framework in place, they now have a fully staffed planning department. So we feel that it's time to have that conversation in terms of moving forward with that particular piece. In terms of Frontenac Islands, we'll be wrapping up the work that we've been doing on Marysville with making some changes to the zoning to reflect the work of the secondary plan that was done. And we also will be online to help with their new official plan and eventually their new zoning bylaw, just waiting, to have those more detailed conversations with the council on the islands in terms of their timing, their budget process and resources, et cetera. In terms of development approvals, applications for at the county level, applications for plans of subdivision and condominium have been relatively slow. The recent applications that we've had have been either for final approvals or for extensions of draft plan approvals. It's always a relative unknown as to what we're going to get. We've had several pre-application consultations with people who are interested in subdivisions, but no subsequent application has actually come forward. And of course, it's even more unknown because we don't know what the uptake is going to look like right now in terms of communal services because it is so new. So we are anticipating, again, another reason for potentially delegating the approval for plans of subdivision and condominium to South Frontenac. That would then free our team up to be able to spend more time on the other 3 townships for those types of applications if or when they come forward. In terms of our planning hours, we've shown on here from 2016 to 2023. As you know, our hours peaked during the pandemic. They started to decline. I don't think we're likely to reach pre-pandemic levels. I feel as a region, we've been discovered, both as a place to live permanently or seasonally. And certainly one of the things that we are looking forward to when we crunch the numbers in January for 2024 is by, I think it was early in this year, was by February of this year, all 4 townships, particularly the 3 that we do the planning services for, had put in place bylaws to delegate the authority of undisputed consents to senior township staff. And I know just based on the workload for the planners on our team, that has had a considerable impact in terms of the amount of time that we're spending on township hours. So in terms of application numbers, again, the number of files have been declining since the pandemic, but again, I don't see it going really. We find that our applications and even the number of inquiries we get tend to tie very closely to interest rates. Right. So as interest rates went up, inquiries and applications declined as people had to make changes in their plans for development or redevelopment. I can tell you that as far as 2024 goes, by the end of the 3rd quarter, we were at 64 applications. So that's about 60% of the 2023 total, not including any active files that we carried over from previous years. And approximately 40% of the applications that we've done this year for the 3 townships that we do the planning for have been delegated authority consent applications. So it has definitely made an impact. And for the deputy mayor, I got some numbers with respect to South Frontenac because I know that we have had conversations in the past about how those numbers play in terms of the work that we're doing overall as a county at sea. I can't talk with my hands now. So in terms of numbers, I have felt over the last few years that the work that we do for the 3 townships in terms of number of applications is relatively on par with South Frontenac, which you can see here, it's very close. I think South Frontenac has just out a bit each year since 2021, but there is some correlation in terms of the development activity that we're seeing. Yeah. No comment. In terms of our resources and our staffing, so always our unknowns are the number of applications and inquiries that we're going to get as a department, as well as changes from the province. So we have been gifted with many changes from the province over the last 2 to 3 years. And I think we've spent, if I remember the number correctly, probably close to 300 hours over the last 2.5 to 3 years, just making changes and working with the 4 townships to make changes to respond to that. So I'm going to move on. And in terms of our staffing, so we're not growing in numbers at this point, but we have been making some changes internally. So earlier this year, council approved transitioning one of our community planner positions to a senior planner project manager position, which was filled internally by Dmitry Kurlovich. And so with the numbers and applications declining, that frees up more time for us to do those broader projects, the policy work. And Dmitry has been able to spend more of his time, on that. Of course, that ebbs and flows as to when the applications come in. But as we move forward, as we continue to find efficiencies through the community planning permit system process, we hope more and more of that position will spend time on the large scale policy projects that benefit the townships and that benefit us regionally. We also just recently worked with our Human Resources Department to transition our summer student position for planning to a planning intern. A small increase in terms of wage to make sure that we're competitive with our neighbors here regionally, as well as what other counties are offering, because this past summer we were not successful in attracting a summer student. And we were fortunate we had somebody on contract who was willing to extend their contract. Otherwise, we would have probably felt very stretched over the summer months. So the other thing that we are hoping that this new position does is it's not tied directly to the summer months. So if we, in the future, we have someone who takes short-term leave and we have a 3 or 4 month window that we need to fill, there's an opportunity we could do that with an intern, because some of the planning schools, such as the University of Waterloo, do offer co-op programs, and those are not tied directly to the summer. In terms of risk analysis and mitigation, just as an advisement, as always, major policy reviews end up getting delayed or suspended because of just ongoing day-to-day work with applications. But we feel, we have been working quite diligently at some process improvements and efficiencies that are now starting to allow us the time to focus on policy work. There was only 13% of the time in 2023 dedicated to policy work for the county, but I believe that that's the first time in a long time it's been over 10%. So we are starting to see the benefits of that. And of course, the mitigation to that is that occasionally, if there is work that the townships would like our team to do, and we are not able to do it in the time frame that the township wishes, then the township may be in a position where they have to look at hiring a consultant to do that specific project. And then just finally, just a snapshot of the sustainability reserve. So this reserve was established several years ago with its intent really is twofold. One is to cover the costs of our planned studies that we do on a relatively regular basis, or that are intended to support the entire region. It is also there for us to provide support if we are drawn into an appeal at the Ontario Land Tribunal to help cover off with legal costs. And that was my last slide. Any questions on the business plan?
Mr. Fowler?
Yes, thank you very much, Sonia. The communal services, are there different types of them? Like in the one folder, there's a self-contained unit. Are there systems that are like an extra large well and septic system? Is that something that they could use as well as these self-contained units?
Through you, Deputy Warden. So I want to make sure I understand the question. Are you talking about individual houses or larger developments?
Larger development.
Through you, Deputy Warden. So I am not an expert on the technology, and so that is certainly something the Municipal Services Board is looking at with their technical review group that they have. My understanding, and Director Gallivan can correct me if I'm wrong, is that ultimately what the board is hoping to do, especially now that they have hired an operator, is probably almost pre-approve a small number of these systems that could be used. Obviously others could be used, but I don't know the technology myself to be able to tell you what they look like.
Go ahead, Mr. Gallivan.
Through you, Deputy. Yeah, there are a lot of different systems that are out there in the market. Interestingly, many of the ones that are used all over the world are designed and built right here in Ontario. I think to Sonia's point, the utility would like to say that they want to look at these different systems and they want to say, okay, we're going to pick 2 or 3 that we want to be the standard for building in our region, so that as they start to get put in the ground, they're only dealing with those 2 or 3 systems. So they don't have to accumulate different parts. But the other key message I would say is that the beauty of these, especially for us, is they are very scalable. You can do communal on as little as 4 units up to 5,000, thousands of them. So that will be the benefit. And yes, some communal are not in a box. Some of them have some technology that might be in a box, but they treat it in the ground as well. I hope that clarifies things.
Councillor Lichty?
So just for clarity, and I sit on the FMSC board, at the last meeting, we did ask staff, a technical group, to do a presentation to all the townships, highlighting what's been done so far, what we're looking at, what the direction is going to be. So all that information is going to come out, and you'll have an opportunity right in our own council chambers to ask all these questions. So.
Gordon Smith?
Just a question on the natural heritage study. Since that was in our budget, those dollars have already been raised and will be brought back in?
Through you, Deputy Warden. Yes, so if you see here on this chart, so 2024, the reserve is quite high, and then you see it drop in 2025. So that is the money that has been allocated for natural heritage that will be taken out. So the money was allocated from the reserve fund in 2023 and is still there waiting to be used. So there's no additional money that needs to come out of the levy or the reserve fund. It's there ready to be used.
Councillor Greenwood Spears?
On the communal services piece, you indicated that now we're in the position that we can start to inform developers of communal services, but we still haven't got the provincial approvals, correct?
Through you, Deputy. So 2 things. First of all, one of the biggest roadblocks, which was requirements for a municipal responsibility agreement, which is a provincial requirement. We have overcome that stumbling block because we've set up the utility, and any developer is no longer going to have to go to an individual township and ask them to sign an agreement. Staff and the board at FMC board are working currently with the Ministry of the Environment in conversations to change the environmental approval process, to streamline the process, recognizing we're now going to have, for the first time in Ontario, a utility in place to manage communal systems, to make sure they go in the ground the right way, and then that they're assumed by the corporation, they're owned, publicly owned, and they're managed by the corporation. So we want to convince the ministry that they have to find a different process that recognizes that will speed things up. So that's in process right now.
If I might add to that, we can go ahead and do one tomorrow. The province isn't stopping us from doing that. The province is delaying it with 3 years of red tape because a municipality has to go through all the EA studies. What we're fighting for is if they agree that 2 or 3 of these companies are legit and all of the business they do is correct, it should be a rubber stamp instead of 3 years of EA. And the example, and I don't know if you've ever heard it before, but it was, the former CAO said it's like a Ford 150. All the design work, all of the safety features, all of those things are done takes a year or 2 to create the first one, but they don't have to approve every truck that comes off the line after that. And so that's all work. That's not all, it's a big one, but that's what we want the province to change their mind on. They're not stopping us. We can do them, but it's going to be a 3 or 4 year process instead of, okay, these are the systems we will approve automatically. And if you've done this and this and this, you can go ahead in 3 months or whatever. Pardon?
And the dollars.
And the dollars. So that's the biggest, they're not telling us we can't do it. It's just a long, long process the way it is now for municipalities. Other questions for? I have a couple then. The community planning permit, and you did say it was for all 4. Is that a delegated authority or does it go through bylaw? or both.
For you. So what we're working on right now is a template. So, there will be no official bylaw that county council will pass. Essentially, you will, basically, it will reach a point where we ask you to receive the template in fulfillment of the terms of reference that we had with the consultant, and then ask it to be distributed to each of the townships for their consideration and implementation. And so once it gets to the township level, in the township, it gets it into a form that it's happy with, then they pass that as a bylaw. And that bylaw will replace the zoning bylaw for those lands that are defined within it. And then within the bylaw, and this is where each township gets to make their own decision about, is you get to decide the level of approval that staff can make and the level of approval that council can make. And so an example is, I don't remember the township, it probably was Lake of Bays, but for example, like on the waterfront, lot coverage is a big deal, right? So the bylaw would say maximum lot coverage for a waterfront property is 10%. And then it would say, if you are requesting a variance, staff can approve a variance up to 12.5%. But if you want to go above 12.5%, you have to go to council. And so what we've heard from staff at those townships is that actually becomes a really good negotiation tool, because most people who want to build don't want to wait or take their chance at going to council. So maybe they come in at 14% lot coverage with their proposal for a new cottage, and they have the conversation with staff and they see the numbers. They go away and they work with their designer to bring lot coverage down to 12.5%. All of a sudden, they're getting a permit approval at the staff level and they never have to have a public meeting or go to council. So there's efficiencies on the permitting side, but then you're also getting that benefit of trying to achieve those goals of shoreline and waterfront protection.
A lot of the, I won't say a lot of the staff time, in the past, it definitely was. But now the province has changed it that the appeal is not like it used to be, right? So if there's subdivisions and all that things, remember how they used to take Joe's whole life? That's not the same way anymore, right?
No, it's not. So the way, and I'm probably oversimplifying this, but the way it seems to work is if you are passing a new document, so a new official plan, a new community permit bylaw, a new zoning bylaw, there is an opportunity for somebody to appeal based on how that document impacts their individual property. So there still is an appeal right for the bigger projects and the bigger documents. What there aren't appeal rights for, at least for, let's call them third parties such as neighbors or other community members, are for individual site-by-site applications. So the province has basically said, if you are going to appeal, you need to be a specified person. And they have a very long list now in the Planning Act of who gets to be either a specified person or a public body. And generally the average citizen is not included on that list. So, yeah.
So if the municipality, as Frontenac takes over delegated authority of subdivision, there still is some risk though.
Subdivisions can't be appealed.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
No.
okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
getting to then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. The other part I wanted to say, wasn't Orn at their last meeting, they said they were gonna, are they the ones that are gonna do the road show about telling everybody about communal services? Because that's the way they spoke, and I already called a couple developers, and I did call a staff member to say, we need to reach out to people if they're gonna do a road show to explain to people. So where were you on that, Mr. Galvin? No,
No,
that's
so
what I thought I heard, but.
they're actually doing a seminar today, a virtual seminar. They're actually, people that are in the seminar are there because of Frontenac County.
Yeah.
Because of the connections we've made. But that is different. They're talking about the technology, what Ms. Bolton was saying, like the meeting we had last week with Central Frontenac, and we'll be coming to North next, is you need to have a conversation with your community about where you want this kind of development. Do you want them in all your hamlets or not? Do you want to be specific? Do you want them on lakefronts? If so, all lakes, or at what scale? And to sign his analogy about the 100-acre parcel rural land, and you have a good policy in your draft official plan, what's the scale that you think is good rural planning to allow that? So that's a community consultation. So Central will be looking at having a public meeting in the first quarter of next year, and I'm hoping to come in North Council either next month or January to start that conversation with you and then Frontenac Islands as well.
So would that conversation happen in South Frontenac before the official plan?
That's part of, you have policies in your plan right now that you should make sure that your community is comfortable with.
Yeah, just further to that is there was a meeting specific to communal services, I believe it was back at the end of August for South Frontenac with respect to the communal service policies in the official plan.
And my last comment, I know it's not really budget, but it is, you were talking about planning and whether we had comments or questions, so I do have one last one. I'm afraid, I know in South Frontenac, we're getting too many policies. And I think building challenges that in our municipality are, I'll say at best, getting more difficult, and they're not consumer friendly at all. And we have created a whole underground. And I know it. And people are not gonna come forward because they're not comfortable coming forward because the list is too long of what everybody wants done. And so they're taking the chance. And when they take the chance and get away with it, it does not go on the tax roll. And I can give you 50 examples, but that's not my job to tell the building department either, and I won't. But that's what I'm afraid about policies. And whenever we put a policy in, some people read the policy a lot different than other people. And somebody who likes authority or likes to be in those positions will read it a lot different than the common person. And I find that's the challenges we're really running into. But that's just a comment about
I would just say that
policies.
the philosophy of our department has been right from the outset is there's policies, but we're not adherent and strict and black and white to those policies. We have a philosophy of bend but don't break. I mean, you're correct, Warden. Too many policies is confusing. It's really about a vision for the community. But we've always been flexible and trying to help people do what they want to do on their property.
Which I agree, because we had a former mayor that said, why even have committee of adjustment? Planning is black and white. I said, that's why it's called adjustment. And that's why that should be the way it is with everything, as long as you're not technically breaking something that's. Councillor Greenwood Spears.
What you just described was very shocking to me. And I'm wondering, how does that impact, or does it impact our GIS? And that if we have buildings being put up and they're not being located and things that certainly not being on the tax roll near the mayor and that, but that's another issue in that. But I look at it from a ambulance call or fire safety perspective and that.
None of these are houses.
Oh, additions, changes. Okay.
They're garages, they're additions, they're, you name it. Okay. Any other questions then? Thank you.
Oh, and it's right there. Excellent. I do have one project proposal. This will likely be the shortest presentation you ever received from me. So here we go. You might get the mic. So as I had mentioned, we are looking at updating our population, housing and employment projections for the region. So they were last completed in late 2019, approved in 2020 using the 2016 census data. And when we do our projections, we are very specific that we include numbers both for permanent and seasonal residents, because we know that the seasonal residents make up a huge some membership within our communities. So as an example, this is taken from the last study here that was done in terms of how they anticipated growth to be allocated by township, and this graph in particular shows a combination of both the permanent and the seasonal population growth. But we know that things have changed since COVID and since the 2021 census was released, so that we've had significant changes in growth and building and consumer habits. And when we do these projections, they are a real foundational piece for us in community planning as well as in economic development. They should be updated every 5 years in relation to the census cycle. The last budget request was in 2018, and council received the report in 2020. As I said, we have the 2021 census data, and all of the data has now been released and is available. So which is why we are looking at moving ahead with this project. Also, the timing of feeding into the update of our official plan is also very key. So we are looking at starting and doing this project next year. The cost estimate that we've provided right now is about $45,000. I think we did it last time, it was 40,000. So, you know, everything has gone up in price. So we're earmarking about $45,000, and the proposal is to take that money from the sustainability reserve, which is there for these kinds of planned projects. I will point out that we do know that recently South Frontenac did some updates to their projections specifically for their township for their development charges bylaw. So our hope is that we may not need the 45,000. Our hope is that there can be some efficiencies there if we're able to use some of the numbers that have already been done specifically for South Frontenac. So we will of course investigate that when we do put out the RFP to hire the consultant.
With a contribution, of course, towards the front. No, just kidding.
Or we'll just trade it for some other things we do for you.
Yeah. Total of 6 slides. There we go. Are there any questions specifically to the project proposal?
I have one. How do you get the numbers when you sure can't rely on MPAC?
Oh,
So how do you go about getting true numbers?
I would have to I mean, they're not true numbers because they're projections. And usually what the consultants do is when they look, they will give the municipality 3 different growth scenarios. So a low, medium, and high in terms of growth, so that you can see what that does overall to the numbers. So it's an odd mix of an art and a science.
And you're not giving the actual number of what's there now. It's just talking about growth.
It does talk about growth. So we do try and ground truth like what we know the current population to be. And then there is a lot of information needed from staff in terms of, you know, recent building permit, consent application numbers for new lots and those kinds of things. So there is, you know, since the census, we do add in additional data to help the consultant be able to round out those numbers as to what that additional growth could be.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Green-Grace.
So this is a specific sustainability fund reserve for planning and economic development, correct?
I think it's just for planning,
Planning,
just for planning,
okay.
yeah.
How does it get replenished?
I will ask the treasurer.
There's an annual contribution in the reserve that goes into that, for that, 35,000, give or take 1,000 on that.
Okay, the
Yep.
reason I asked is I could see that it has had a dramatic decline in that, and I don't want to leave it in a poorer position that for any future councils, and that since we need to somewhere figure out how much we need to have in that. But if you're taking 45,000 out and 35,000 goes in, you're going down again.
And I'll maybe add just the frame of reference for that chart. I think if you went a couple years earlier, you'd see that balance growing. The reason that's kind of spiked up a little bit, the natural heritage study, which was, I believe, originally planned for 23, got pushed back. So that's why there's that big dip that comes a bit later.
And those fees come in through applications and that, right? Some of that is on contribution of that or not? I mean, there's a charge for doing business, obviously.
Yeah, so there's some recovery through planning fees. Most of planning that development though would either be recoveries from the townships or through the levy.
Okay. Thank you. And I was told that Barb's gonna put us right on track because we need it. You know, Richard's behind you again after the break. Hold on. Hour and a half.
Good morning, Warden, Deputy Warden, and members of council. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to present the Human Resources Business Plan. But just before I get started, not to be totally outdone by Madam Clerk, I feel the need to share some important history information about the HR function. I'll be very brief. So the earliest version of HR came about in the 1910s as organizations looked to employment clerks, whose job it was to select daily, mostly in factories, with the term human resource having been first coined in 1893, not quite as old as Madam Clerk, by John R. Commons, who was considered the spiritual father of Social Security and developed the most progressive social and labor legislation enacted in the 20th century. And during World War I, demand for HR-like employees jumped as many women and men were going off to serve their country. That enforced employers to raise wages, focus on recruiting, and formalize their employment efforts. While legislative clerks apparently have the ability to place a curse, HR staff were once considered the police of employees in an organization. We've come a long way though, and for several decades now, we consider ourselves business partners. With that said, I'll start my business plan presentation.
And the job is still the same, not the same, but I mean, it's still relevant to what you said right there at the start, right? It's comparing wages, being competitive, hiring.
Okay, so if we look internally about what's been happening, we continue to have a fair amount of labor relations activity. There's focus on health and safety from the unions, and rightly so. And you're going to hear that we do have negotiations with all three unions. You're going to hear that a couple of times probably. We have the continued expansion of the paramedic services. And as we heard from Susan yesterday, we continue to work towards the 4 hours of care at Fairmount Home. We currently still are relying on some agency staff to fill voids in staffing. We also, due to the ongoing, and it's not just the County of Frontenac, it's most employers are seeing an increase in mental health claims over the years, and they continue to go up. So we are focusing on enhancing our wellness strategy with a focus on mental well-being. We want to continue to develop our leaders. So we'll be talking about the different programs we have in place to develop our leaders in succession. And we continue to implement the Star Garden Human Resources Information System, which obviously is critical to business process improvement. And there is a project team on the implementation of the Verico scheduling system, which council approved earlier this year. And we will also be implementing an occupational health documentation system. So externally, again, we know that there have been high levels of recruitment activity. We have new long-term care homes being built. We have some long-term care homes expanding. We are competing against hospitals and other long-term care homes in the nearby area. And we also know that we have the challenge of getting staff too up here on Battersea to be able to work, those that don't have cars. And the agencies, of course, staff that choose to work with an agency do so because they can set their own schedule and pick and choose when they want to work. So that is a bit of a challenge as well. We have ongoing negotiation or ongoing inflation, I should say, and despite the CPI coming down, we're still seeing in the market that the price of things is high, and that has an impact on negotiations. And we've also seen higher awards from arbitrators, and we continue to see that into 2025. We still have the desire for continued remote working when we're recruiting new employees. That's sometimes asked, actually quite frequently asked, if there is an opportunity to work remotely. Looking at some of the key achievements, in 2023, we filled 83% of all of our jobs that we had posted. And as of the end of August, and these numbers are all going to be for 2024 as of the end of August, so I won't keep repeating that, but we had 240 job postings. Of course, that's continued to increase. You can see on the right there in the chart that as Deputy Warden spoke to yesterday, there was an increase in several areas during COVID. Well, we had that same peak in recruitment. It's now leveling off, but still considerably higher than what it was pre-COVID. And our internal hire rate is trending a little bit lower, but that's because we've had more external hires this year so far. Our turnover rate for 2023 was 20% on average overall, and it ranged from 10% to 29%. The 29% at our long-term care home. Again, challenge to keep hire and retain staff due to the very competitive nature of that market. In leadership development, we continue to focus on not only group development, but also individual development, and in particular for our succession plans. So we had 3 people attend fact-finding investigations at Queen's University. We had 14 leaders go through the Myers-Briggs type indicator tool, and then a workshop, which I'm certified to provide in-house. And we had 9 new leaders go through the 360 feedback survey tool. And Chief Gowdy and myself are trained to provide that feedback to them and go through the report with them. Currently, we're in the works with 26 leaders going through the 360 feedback tool for the second time. So every couple of years, we take them through that. And under the leadership of Chief Gowdy and Deputy Chief Hurtubise, staff are going through the Leeds Healthcare Leadership Program. Many of us have started that, and as well, frontline staff have started into that education as well, which is great. We have 32 successors identified for 29 positions in our succession plans, and we meet semi-annually to update those plans and make sure that we have individual development plans for those potential successors. We had 106 new hires internal from the external last year, I should say. So they went through the civility and workplace and equity, diversity, inclusion, which all new hires go through. And so far this year, we have had 104 as of the end of August. And that ties back to the lower internal hire rate because we've been bringing more new employees in. With the labor relations in 23, we had 100% of grievances either resolved, withdrawn, or abandoned for our 2 CUPE unions, and 36% for the paramedic OPSU union. Overall, we had 34 grievances in 2023, 14 referred to arbitration, and 21 investigations either led or participated with HR. And so far, we've had 27 grievances, 5 referred to arbitration, and 7 investigations year to date. Our occupational health and abilities management, our occupational health nurse has seen an increase in her visits from employees, which is great. Part of that's probably due to us being back in the office. And we've seen the number is trending a little bit lower this year for workplace incidents and lost time claims. So we're hoping that that continues through the end of the year. In chronic temp and COVID hours in 23, we had 30.8% of our total sick hours was related to chronic disability or chronic illness, temporary disability, and COVID. We no longer track COVID illness. So far this year, we're looking at 22.6% of all sick hours related to the chronic and temporary disability. In 23, before our occupational health nurse retired, we updated all of the occupational health policies, and we continue. My colleagues in the senior leadership team love it when I bring lots of policies to SLT for review.
That's not very nice worker rate into the retirement.
For process improvement, we continue to implement the Star Garden HRIS. In 23, the payroll and recruitment modules were implemented, as well as the document management, meaning we uploaded all of our policies into the system so employees can easily access the policies, training, skills, education, and certificates. So when someone attends a course, we put that into their profile, and employees have the ability to go online and see various aspects of their own employee electronic file. We also have our grievances, discipline, and onboarding is also all done through Star Garden. Currently, we are testing the succession management module and hope to have that launched before the end of the year. And in 25, we will be moving forward with our performance management, having our forms online and that process moving online. And our scheduling software, as you know, we are planning to implement that in Q1 of 25. And other process improvements, we continue with virtual mediations. Not so much bargaining. We've heard that all three unions would like to bargain in person going forward. And also our onboarding is done monthly virtually so that everybody can participate in all the department representation provides their orientation to the new hires. When we returned to the office, Human Resources went from 5 massive filing cabinets down to 2. So that was a process improvement, and we continue to, everything is filed since COVID, it's filed electronically. Compensation, each time there is a new QP 2290 collective agreement, we need to complete the pay equity analysis. So that was finished, and we are pay equity compliant as of the end of 23. We also did that process for the non-union group. And as you know, we did the remuneration studies for council and non-union, and HR also provided support in various smaller department reorganizations or job description development and job evaluation. With our recruitment and retention, we will expand our branding with our communications officer to the Frontenac paramedics and marine services starting in 25. And we'll start again with in-person job fairs, and that way we have the ability to interview people on the spot. And we'll hope to expand our partners with the education facilities. As mentioned, we want to have an increased focus on health and well-being for our employees. A survey was done, the committee was formed. We have representation from every department for that committee. And in doing so, we hope that that will enhance the employee experience and engagement, which helps with our retention. And we also want to make sure that we're practicing inclusive hiring practices and making sure that we are tackling our unconscious bias when we are in the recruitment process. We also want to, next year, research hiring assessments geared towards the competencies of position and how that applicant may be resilient or be able to demonstrate resiliency in the position they're applying for. We have identified certain leadership development activity or education that all leaders go through. As I mentioned, the Myers-Briggs tool, conflict resolution, managing in a unionized environment. We recently hosted a workshop for that for several municipalities here. And we're also doing that for investigation training next month. And also the Leeds Healthcare Leadership Program and the 360. And again, in December, we'll update our succession plans. As mentioned, we have negotiations with all three unions. We're starting with QP 2290 next month. We have 3 dates set, and we will continue to bargain with all three unions throughout the course of 2025, I'm sure. And when government changes, as we know, there's legislation changes, and also we get legislation changes ongoing. I just saw some come through that are now approved as of yesterday. So that is a focus as well to make sure that we're always up to date with those legislative changes. We'll be implementing the non-union remuneration study. We'll be implementing those changes in January. And we'll be looking at the feasibility of hiring and retention incentive systems for the long-term care as well for marine services. We started paying for the program. So the required programs that the ferry operators have to take, we've started to pay for that program. Actually now, year and a half, I think it would be. And we pay it back. So once hired after X number of shifts, they get 33% back, and then another 33%, and then the final after, I believe it's 120 12-hour shifts. And as we heard from finance, we do have consideration of taking the benefits program possibly to market in 2025 or 2026. And we will continue to implement the changes from the suggestions, recommendations from the workplace disability audit that we participated in. With employee health and wellness, our occupational health nurse also has had to do some process improvement and reduce her file cabinet space. But we will be moving to software to track all of our employee or disability management occupational health files. So that will be a secure software that all of that information will now be tracked online. And we will continue to focus on working with WSIB and our LTD provider to ensure that we can get our staff back to work as soon as it is, safe to do so. It's getting dry here. And our occupational health nurse is also trained to provide working minds workshops, which are very beneficial to staff to understand mental health processes and recognize signs of deterioration and how to get back on track. So she will be implementing several of those workshops in the new year. Risk, I don't think I need to say more here on the health human resources crisis. Caution, we still have our WSI presumptive legislation. So again, we work with those partners to get people back to work when it's safe to do so. Our absenteeism levels, again, we have our analysis of the trends, but also a focus on the wellness. And we have the negotiations with all 3 bargaining units, which we're currently doing research and analysis and planning for. And once we have a new QP collective agreement, we will have our pay equity maintenance to complete again. Any questions?
Councillor Leonard.
Thank you. Right back to the very beginning, I heard you say that people wanting to work remotely, has this become a bargaining tool?
Through you, Deputy Warden, that's in reference to more office staff, not particular frontline staff can't work remotely.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
Do you think the quality of work is there, or do you think the volume of work is there?
I would believe in most cases, the volume of work is there, but we also know that being back in the office, we can collaborate better. It's a little easier to collaborate and bounce ideas off somebody right away. But we can do that through Teams too.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Greenwood Spears.
Yes, the Fairmont Manor turnover 29%. And Marine Services at 25%. Are those increased from what they were last year? Are they trending up, or are they stabilized, or because the cost of turnover is crippling? And I don't think a lot of people that aren't in HR realize just how crippling it is.
Through you, Deputy Warden. Prior, we hadn't tracked it by department. So this year, or 2023, we started tracking it by department. But yes, I mean, the cost of turnover is horrendous. But we see that turnover, and we see that in long-term care, especially right now with people wanting, the last couple of years, they maybe can't get the transportation here, or they go for more money. But we've also seen an increase in agency staff, people going to agencies because they can pick and choose their schedule.
No other questions or comments?
Thank you.
It's break time. So let's try for 10 minutes. And if we can't do it in 10 minutes, we'll take it off of Richard's time, whatever we're longer.
Well, I'm happy to be back in front of you yet again this morning. And I just wanted to let you know that the earliest use of trails dates back to prehistoric times, originating from game paths created by animals and early humans followed for hunting. These primitive routes evolved into essential pathways for trade, migration, and communication, laying out the groundwork for human civilization. So,
I was gonna say, don't use too much of your airtime.
yeah, I won't. But I just thought I'd play along. Yes. As you all know, we have a trail that we manage here. It's called the KMP Trail. It's in Frontenac. We currently have 78 kilometers that the trail that we manage. And there's another dozen or so kilometers planned for development in this in this project from an infrastructure standpoint. We've been doing this for 15 years now, and we have been working on the infrastructure significantly, and we get compliments on our infrastructure, but really our focus is moving from infrastructure to economy. And we want to make sure that we are getting people on our trails and that those people are stopping at places along our trails to spend money and to contribute to our economic development in Frontenac County. And that's the big focus, because something that we do well as municipalities is we know how to build roads and replace culverts and look at those things. But what we sometimes forget is what we're trying to do on those roads and why they're there. And that's the economic development side of things. So the current state, I wrote these slides and they went out. We were under construction from Clarendon Station to the Mississippi River. I'm pretty sure we're done. I got a few signs to put up, but the contractor moved very quickly. They started at the end of September, and they will be done before the end of October. We'll have a few signs to put up over the course of the next month, but it's been an incredible rehabilitation process, and we're getting compliments from those trail users who are still going out this time of year along the trail. And so it is now 78 kilometers operating from Orser Road to the Mississippi River. So 63 of those kilometers are available for motorized use. We don't require permits or passes for any use except for snowmobiles in the winter, which is part of the legislation provided around the Snowmobile Act. We estimated that we had 197,000 visits to the trail in 2023, and we still have a pretty equal split between cycling, hiking, and motorized, but we also see other kinds of uses on the trail, such as horseback riding, dog sledding, cross-country skiing, scooters, and all kinds of new devices that are coming with the electric power on the trail. Things that are maybe a scooter and maybe a bicycle, but I'm not sure. So it's they're wearing a helmet, thank goodness. But the ultimate piece is we're seeing a real increase in cycling as well, as they're discovering parts of our trail further north, and as we're developing cycle trail tourism. I do most of the management of the trail, and management of the trail doesn't just include maintenance. Lately we get a few easement requests each year, which take up a bit of my time, a bit of the clerk's time, in terms of getting those passed by council, because we have a disposition bylaw that we have to work through to dispose of the land that we're allowing access across. And we have an operating budget for the trail about $180,000 a year. That allows us to repair bridges, inspect bridges, do dust suppression, do repair culverts, upgrade gravel in different places. We grade a third of the trail each year. This year we were able to grade more of it, but we didn't use it as heavy of a grader as we would like to use. And so next year we'll use a heavier grader on less of the trail. And then we also have a budget for marketing and promotion for the trail as part of this. This year, some of our accomplishments, we continue to acquire the trail corridor in North Frontenac and have some success with that. But the biggest project that caught the minds of our community was the Google Street View project. And so this photo up here is from our 360 camera. So you can go to almost any part of the KMP trail between Clarendon and Orser Road and drop your little Google person down, and you can see the trail from 360 view. And so if you want to check out a bridge or travel the trail but don't feel like walking or driving it, you can see almost every part of it now. This is an accessibility feature. What we've heard in working with other trails organizations is that accessible users who require mobility devices or assistive devices technologies like to be able to see if the surface or will work for them, if the access from the road to the trail will work for them, if they can fit through the gates, that sort of thing. So the Google Street View is really helpful for that. We also have launched the market readiness assessment of the Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop. So that's a partnership that I'll actually speak about that in a minute. So I won't dive too deeply into it, but it's a big project that we're doing in partnership with Lanark County, Renfrew County, town of Smiths Falls and Rideau Lakes to create a 360-kilometer rail trail loop product that we can market internationally to visitors. And then we've seen an increase of formal events on the trail. So we've been very excited for that. In terms of the development that is finishing up right now, I just want to highlight that we were able to do this through partnership. We received financial support from 2 ATV clubs, from the Kick and Push Brewery, from the Charlotte Lake Business Group, and Clarendon Station Accommodation also made a contribution. And when we were going around asking for financial support, it made the papers, and a private donor reached out and added to that project as well. So we were pretty lucky to have partners sign on with us to make this the grant that made this project possible happen. And so it really shows just how much the community supports our trails development and our trail initiative when we can see dollars come in from all across the community. The Eastern Ontario Rail Trail Loop, as I said before, is a 360-kilometer off-road loop of rail trails. It involves the KMP Trail from Harrowsmith all the way up to Renfrew, where it intersects with the Algonquin Trail that travels over to Arnprior and Pakenham, where it becomes the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail, which comes to Smiths Falls, where when you travel through Smiths Falls, you can reconnect to the Cataraqui Trail, which goes back to Harrowsmith. And so that's mostly off-road, and all of the tourism operators and partners that we're working with on this really see this as a potential signature product. We'll be reviewing the assessment over the course of November and bringing it to committee and councils in the new year to look at setting next steps based on the recommendations from the consultant who's completed that. We had so many events this year, mostly organized by the Frontenac ATV Club. So you can see there's a number of ATV club rides on there. In fact, the one that Councillor Leonard and the deputy warden went on isn't even on my list here. But we've seen each of those events have had almost anywhere from 50 to 150 people participating in them, and anywhere from 30 to 75 vehicles. The Kick and Push Century Ride is a bicycle event that takes place on the KMP Trail and launches from downtown Charlotte Lake and heads up along the KMP Trail on a 50-kilometer loop using both the trail and some of our back roads. And then we also got to bring, with the World Trails Conference at the end of September, we were able to bring about 8 to 10 international delegates that were attending the World Trails Conference out on the KMP for them to sort of see how we do things. And they were very impressed, and they said, start planning for success now, because A number of those delegates were from Europe, and right now, if you look up trails in Europe and over tourism, it's wild. They're like queues at the grocery store to get into, or even along trails, and it really impacts how you have that wilderness experience. And so I don't think we have to worry about that right away. Volume is not our major issue, but it's a good reminder to think about what success looks like when we go forward. There's a blank slide here. And so then we have in terms of the economic impact on the trail, we took some data from for day trips. So the data for overnight trips is slightly different, but we took data from day trips for both ATV and side-by-side, and estimated that in 2023 we saw an economic impact of almost $382,000 from ATV use on the KMP trail. And that's using our counter data along with the what's reported in the survey data that was conducted by Moto Canada. With cycling, we took what was used from their survey data conducted by Ontario Bike, and again used our counting apparatus to estimate the number of cyclists that were on the trail with their potential economic impact. In terms of overnight trips, the economic impact from cyclists skyrockets up to $500 a weekend. And we're starting to see more and more cyclists come to our region for our weekend trips, because they don't only just love our trail where they and their families can ride, they love our back roads and our gravel roads as well. And so it's a real asset from a cycling standpoint. As we look forward from a business planning standpoint over the next few years, we'll be doing a user survey next summer to update some of our estimates and numbers, get more local data in terms of what the economic impact is. We'll be launching a trail etiquette initiative. So as we have more activity on the trail, we need to educate each of our user groups about how to work with each other, how to be polite to each other. The wardens that are out there from the ATV club, I tell them when you stop and talk to somebody, take your helmet off. It's a lot less frightening. You look like Daft Punk or like Darth Vader when you're talking to people with your helmet on, and they get it, right? And so we're working on ways to improve knowledge about how to pass somebody who's moving slower than you without scaring them, that sort of thing. And so we want everybody to be friendly, because we want all of our trail users to understand that we need each other to be able to continue investing in trails. The Rail Trail Loop project will continue over the course of the next 2 years. We have trail town engagements planned around the loop that will have us connecting with a few of the communities and villages along the loop to see if where the businesses and community groups can connect with the trail and benefit from the trail. It's really the heart of the economic development side of things, where we're talking about how do you connect with that user group that I described in my economic impact slide. And we'll also be looking at branding and marketing the loop together through Ontario's Highlands and Southeastern Ontario, the two regional tourism organizations. And there'll be development of a joint management plan where we're looking at having consistent management practices around the loop, so that somebody who's on that loop, regardless of what trail they're on, they can have relatively consistent expectations of what to experience from a management perspective. We also have some policies. So Sonia, when she was speaking, was talking about home, it's not home occupation, but home-based uses or uses that might be able to be expanded as of right in policy. We're looking at a similar version of that, but that might be adjacent land uses. So if someone who has a large parcel of land that is adjacent to the trail, maybe we can turn it into something that provides economic benefit. We know we need accommodations on the trail. So what are small scale camping facilities that could be managed and booked online and advertised online. Same with cabins or potentially leasing land to food trucks or something like that. So we're going to look at those kinds of policies there. And something else that we'll be bringing forward is looking at whether or not orphan parcels that are adjacent to the trail are something that we want to get into acquiring, whether they're donated or from a purchase standpoint, in order to provide amenities or that sort of thing. So if we have appropriate lands, perhaps we can lease them to third parties to provide food or accommodations along the lands. So those are the kinds of things we're thinking about, and they'll probably require lots of back and forth at both committee and at council as we go forward. In terms of capital projects going forward, we'd like to get from Snow Road Station or the Mississippi River up to the county boundary. We estimate that's going to be $800,000, so a similar scale of what we've already done. There are the trail's in relatively good shape, except for in a couple spots, so we know that that's going to happen as we go forward. We won't proceed with something like that. We're not asking for budget for that or use of any funds that we have set aside for that right now, because we don't have a full plan in place, and we will bring that plan to council to have a discussion. And then we have some bridge repairs that have been identified. Some of them are relatively small, but we recently added some new bridges to our system in Mississippi Station that require a little bit of upgrading in order to meet our standards and ensure that it's safe. And again, we're not asking for anything right now. We're going to put together a funding plan and partnerships and understand how we're going to address those going forward, because as usual, I try to leverage whatever funds we have on these kinds of projects with our partners at the snowmobile and ATV clubs, but also Trans-Canada Trail or other organizations that might fund trail infrastructure as we work together. So just want you to be aware that these conversations are coming, but we don't have to have it today. And because of all that capital work, we know that we don't have enough in our reserve to complete that work. Our trail reserve is funded through the Canada Community Benefit Fund, or AKA the gas tax. The first half of the trail was developed using the gas tax that was allocated annually to the county. We now flow those funds through to the townships, and so we don't have that annual allocation at the county level. And we were able to complete the last few projects from Charbot Lake to Clarendon, and from Clarendon to the Mississippi, because we were able to set aside some gas tax from one-time fund doublings that happened a few years ago. So we had some fun, and so we have some funds left to be able to do some of the work that we've decided. So that's the primary source of funding from the county that when it goes to trail development. And we're going to look at other mechanisms that might be able to support trails going forward, and again, that'll be a conversation for us to have with council as we look to bring those dollars together. Another piece from a risk standpoint is liability. Everybody says when you're operating something like this, it's not if, it's when, and so we have to make sure that we have the appropriate policies and procedures in our management plan, review and update as necessary, make sure our sign language indicates that we're on a recreational trail and that folks are using it at their own risk. We have to make sure that we're clear about our parameters about what is appropriate to do on the trail at certain locations, and make sure that when we're working with partners like the ATV clubs who have their wardens patrolling, that they understand what their responsibilities are as part of our partnership agreement. And that's the KMP Trail. I don't have any project proposals. As I said, I'll bring those projects to you when we're a little more prepared over the course of the next 5 years.
Councillor Lichty.
First of all, Richard, thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate hearing all that. I just wanted to say I was really impressed with the 8 kilometers from Clarendon Station up to Snow Road. They moved quickly. The work seems good. At 7:10 this morning in the dark, they had a pickup truck with a trailer, and on the back of the trailer was fencing. So they're somewhere down south of Gully Road. So
Right. Counselor Leonard?
Thank you. All these different trails that we're gonna hook up to, how many of them are gonna be motorized?
So the in the rail trail loop I would say about 50% of it, or just over 50% of it includes summer motorized uses. The whole thing includes winter motorized uses.
But are we gonna be able to connect, or is there gonna be sections in between that we can't connect?
So when we're going to initially start this as a cycling product when we market it. One, because if we're reaching out to international visitors, it's easier for them to put their bike on a plane than an ATV. But what we will also be doing is marketing sections and different experiences, because 360 kilometers, even if you're a really dedicated cyclist or even a really dedicated ATVer, it's a long trip. And so we're going to be packaging different parts of the trails and different experiences as they connect. So we might be talking not just Sharbot Lake or Verona to Calabogie, which is what we talk about a lot here in Frontenac. We might be talking about Sharbot Lake to Arnprior or Renfrew, or even all the way over to Carleton Place. And so we'll be looking at how those connections work. Maybe it's you stop an ATV trip might stop halfway and spend the night, continue on, and then double back, or take a back roads route back this way.
Warden Smith?
There are grants that we can apply for bridges and some major things. And I know that you've applied for many grants and you've been successful. Have we ever used companies called Grant Match that can do these grants for us?
I haven't used a Grant Match or any of the similar organizations yet to pursue our grants.
Just a follow-up, I'm just thinking, because of the amount of work, and if you don't get a second person or third person, they do take 10%. They charge 10% if you are successful. If you're not successful, there's no charge, is my understanding. So it might be something to look at down the road, especially when we're looking at $1.5 million for bridges.
Yeah. I appreciate the concern. I guess I would say, like, if we are successful on a $700,000 or $800,000 grant application, we're almost, we're 3/4 of the way towards having another person on our team too for that year. So it's a bit of something we would have to weigh and consider when we go down that route. But I appreciate the suggestion. I know that the township has used Grant Match and to some success.
Counselor Greenman Spears?
Okay, just following up on the grant aspect, there's a new grant out called the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund for $250 million over 3 years, and it's Ontario, and it's just come out new, so that's something to keep in mind. But I was also at a conference where there was a company that presented that they can provide extremely specific data locally, and that enhances your success in getting grant money. And it was actually quite reasonable. I believe it was $6,000 that you could get for the basic. If you wanted to go up higher, you could, but to me, it seemed like a very good bargain in that. And I agree, going after grants would be ideal. And there's actually a couple more that are probably available out there too. There's an Ontario Connecting Links program that I don't know whether we would qualify for that, but I'm pretty sure we would qualify for the sports and recreation. And that's, so always keep your eye open for the grant and try to get that information if you want to look at getting
Thank you.
the specifics.
Counselor Gowdy?
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Thank you again for presentation. I have a couple of questions. When you're doing the survey with the users about the economic impact, will you also be reaching out to the businesses in the area to get both sides of that for your survey?
Yes, when we conducted the survey in 2020, we had a section of the survey that we dedicated towards connecting with the businesses, and we had a different survey for the users, and so we'll be doing both again this time around.
Oh, wonderful. And my other question, it follows up on Councillor Fowler about the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance. They have secured much funding for bridge repairs. So maybe a partnership with them would work to offset the 1.5 million in repairs that we are going to need in the future.
Certainly worth exploring.
Councillor Saunders?
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Richard, you said $180,000 was the operating cost. Did I get that? I don't know, again, is there a way to defer that, or is there a way to look at other organizations to start picking up some of the cost of that? Is that, when we talk about partnerships and stuff? And just want to, I'm a huge fan of trails, so don't take it the wrong way. I think the job your group has done to develop the trail is phenomenal. I think it's a real asset, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to take that and sort of pass the ongoing operation of it to another group with that kind of expertise. That's kind of where I'm going.
So the let's see here. There are we have had discussions with the townships about that, but even in the townships that we have connected with in the past that might have brushing equipment or might have grading equipment, they're all working at capacity just to keep their own roads and projects in place. We've looked at one of the things that we are doing in our partnership, and we'll be bringing some information about this to council in November. But with our partnership with the Frontenac ATV Club, we recognize that a significant portion of our maintenance happens because we have motorized uses. And so the ATV Club has been working on developing the capacity to contribute towards those motorized uses. So for example, this year they've provided us with over $10,000 towards the dust suppression efforts, and they've also provided funding towards the capital projects, and they're looking to increase and make an annual commitment towards those maintenance operations. And if their membership grows, they would be able to have the capacity to provide that. The snowmobile clubs, generally, they have their own equipment and they do their own maintenance in the winter. We don't get involved in winter maintenance, and so we don't get much funding for operations from them, but we do see on small or large capital projects, we work together. For example, we got $60,000 from the LNA Ridge Runners last year, $67,000 to pay for a bridge replacement that we did at Elbow Creek. So the way that the pieces kind of come together with the various user groups is complex. The other piece is like when we talk about trails and trail governance, there are a number of different models throughout the region. And some of the things that we're looking at in terms of is like strengthening our signage program. We get some revenue from businesses for that. It's at cost at the moment, but maybe it's something that could go into funding more of our revenue without being a stretch for the businesses, because we now have grown that program to be large enough and to be for businesses to understand whether or not it's worth it for them to be involved in.
Councillor Fowler?
Yes, one of the questions I have is there a size limit of the vehicles that can use the trail? Like I was in Charlotte Lake and I saw a group of very large ATVs, like lasers, and they look like dune buggies. Is there going to be a size restriction?
We currently don't have a size restriction for motorized users, but the line between ATV and off-road car or Jeep has been blurred, certainly in the last few years. There's a lot, just like the scooter that has a seat that I'm not sure if it's a bicycle or a scooter. We're seeing that in these larger things where there's a huge range now in size, speed, capacity, and we may have to have conversations about that with the committee.
I just have one more comment regarding the bridge at Mississippi Station. I think that's completed. It's a big culvert. I was looking at it the other day. Did a real great job on that section.
Yeah,
It looks really good.
Yeah, thank you. That culvert is, did require, replacement, and we thank the Conservation Authority for working with us on getting the permit together quickly to be able to move on that. But there are two bridges south of there that do need remediation as well.
You answered the one question. Town municipalities aren't doing in-kind service, or at least you're not asking, or they're not donating. You already answered that one, so I won't ask that. We made the gas tax contribution. Does that go on forever? I thought it was a commitment of X number of years, or is this just to eternally keep giving you the gas tax?
Is this in relation to the amount in the that goes to KNP Trail Development?
I think
So
it was
there-
that when we started that, wasn't it?
So there's a one-time contribution allowing up to $813,000 to be used on the trail. We just haven't exhausted that whole 813 yet in terms of, because we had a couple other grants come up, so it's kind of let us prolong the use of that.
And the outside the box one, and you don't have to answer this one either. But somebody suggested at one time, and it was in a newsletter somewhere, that you could buy old rail cars and they were using them for bridges on their trail. Was that ever explored?
I know, but we are aware of Old Bailey bridges that are available through one of our partners, and we're looking at what it would like, what kind of shape they're in, and whether or not we could procure them and use them for some of our bridge projects. So we're remaining creative in terms of how we address things, because not all of our bridges have to be able to carry highway traffic.
Thank you very much, Richard. We got to move on. We do. We have to move on. He's covered. Liability, you want to answer it? Go ahead. I don't care.
Do we have a specific rider for liability in that for any of the accidents that occur? Because we'll certainly be named in the suit.
So our insurance insures us for the operation of a recreational trail, and we and our partners that we work with, so whether it's the snowmobile clubs or the ATV clubs, they all carry $15 million of liability for those uses as well. So depending on what the nature is in terms of an issue, we have lots of ample coverage, but what we want to do is avoid anything from happening that makes somebody want to sue us. We want to keep people safe and secure while they're on our trail.
And it's no different for roads or any other municipality. And that question's been asked several times and the answer was the same. We have it. Okay, we're going to move on. We have to move on. We're going to get behind and we've still got a long ways to go. So Kevin would like to say a few words, and then we're going to bring up the outside proposals because there's a couple of people that have asked for something. They are not in there yet. And then we're going to put the list up.
Perfect. Thank you, Deputy Warden. So I'll be very brief. I just want to echo some of my opening remarks and recognize that staff have worked extremely hard to bring you this budget for consideration. So we brought forward specific project proposals that are important to improve service delivery across our organization. Each of the project proposals before you have merit, which unfortunately makes your job not so easy. Again, a huge thank you to our senior leadership team and everyone who prepared and presented to council over the last couple of days. A lot of work does go into this, so kudos to the team. Also, a big thank you to council for the discussion that's been had, your insights that you've brought forward, and your ongoing consideration. So I think now we'll turn it over to our treasurer, Alex Lemieux, to walk us through the spreadsheet exercise.
And Alex has moved. For anybody that's looking for Alex back there, he's over here.
All right, thank you. So maybe the first thing to discuss here, we haven't talked about the external requests yet. So there was one that was put forward this year. It was a $2,500 request from the Food Policy Council. I'll maybe just turn it back to council if there's any discussion there.
Gordon Smith.
I want to support this. It's 0.02 of our budget, and food is important to all of our municipalities and all of our residents.
What do you want to do with it? Just go ahead with it? Do we need a consensus? What would you like here, Madam Clerk? Pardon?
So there is a report following the budget one, and that is the report to provide requests for outside agencies, and then you set the dollar amounts. So the only one that was requested was the Food Policy Council. They were asking 2,500. We just need a mover and a seconder and a dollar amount that you want to put in there.
We have a mover, we have a seconder, Gordon Smith, Councillor Lichty for 2,500. All in favor? Carried. Okay, let's go to the harder ones. Do you want to go down the list, or what do you want to do? You can see the total number there. Do you want, I would say, let's go down the list from the top to the bottom and have some brief comments of whether you think they should be in or out. So the top one obviously is the 12-hour crew. Any comments? Warden Smith.
I think we have to support this. I think, again, we know that our paramedic service is in trouble. And again, it's for all of our residents, Kingston and us. And for 1.26% of the budget, I think it's money well spent.
I would like to say, I don't think that we should use the word that our paramedic service is in trouble. I don't think that's fair.
I just mean
I know,
getting
I know.
places
Yep,
within the time they want.
and
is
it can
helpful.
only help everybody. Councillor Greenwood Spears.
I'm just wondering how much we're regaining now that we have somebody at KGH that is helping to get the offboarding shortened up, because that had been a major stumbling block. And if that can be maintained, if we actually are recouping 1 or 2 12-hour shifts in time.
Well, you saw the report. It shows a 12-hour shift for the next 5 years. So those statistics will have to come back to see if it's working or it's not working, or whether we're reducing our times or whatever. So I don't think that's appropriate here, or either we're adding it in or we're not. So do we have a mover or a seconder to leave it in? Warden Smith, seconded by Councillor Gowdy, to leave it in. Is there any other discussion of in or out? If not, all in favor of leaving it in? Pardon?
Like a recorded vote.
Okay. Yes,
I,
Councillor.
I'd like to ask just one question that probably goes to Mark. If we delayed this 3 months, is that going to mess with your plans? Like when you did the presentation, I asked about, are you ready to go on day one? And you said pretty much. But if we made the end of March, which would reduce this to some extent for the first year, we pick it up next year. Is that an impact?
I think the bigger impact will likely be on the land ambulance grant funding that Alex spoke to yesterday. Just because that'll affect the next year's funding, yeah.
And if you're delaying it, we're going to be sitting here next year on a 12-hour shift to do the same thing. That,
So we don't actually need movers and seconders for any of these projects. We really just need a show of hands because we're not adopting the budget at this time.
still
We're
comes
just
down.
getting direction on what to bring forward in the November meeting.
Okay, all in favor of leaving it in? Opposed? Carried. Superintendent. I'm not in favor. I'll start off. That's an extra that technically is not legislative requirement yet. And I think by adding the 12-hour shifts, I think that's a good place to start. And so I'm not in favor of that yet. Comments, councillors?
I agree that I think that we already have lots of superintendents at this point in time, but I do appreciate the need for the training. So I'd urge them to explore partnership. If Cornwall is too far, potentially Loyalist might be another opportunity for training.
Warden Smith.
I'd like to reserve coming back to that at the end. Again, it's looking after people, and that superintendent, it will be important to the health of our paramedics. So I would like to be on the fence right now, but reserve the ability to bring that back when we get to the end.
I won't tell you what happens to people that sit on the fence. So, okay, we'll come back. Economic Development, Community Development Officer. Comments? Counselor Fowler.
I
Yeah.
think we should explore the possibility of having an outside person help with the trail and fill that position.
So we are supporting this position, is that what you're saying?
No, I think we should wait and do deliberations later on and have our offer with the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance for help.
Counselor Lichty.
I think I understand your point, but I think there's more to this position. Actually, I'm in favor of this because I like the way it's been laid out this year. I didn't like it last year and voted against it. I think we talk about development and, you know, small businesses and pushing this and pushing that initiative, and we're gradually growing. And if we don't, we're going to be looking, you know, in the rearview mirror at the wrong time. So I'm going to support this time.
So we got a yay and we got a nay. All those in favor of leaving it in? Opposed?
We're not technically voting, but a tie vote is a lost vote.
No, it's out then. That's because Fran wanted us to leave it there to see where we were, but. Okay, legislative services. Any questions, comments? That was changing the record system. Well, it doesn't matter, it's zero. Anybody want to take it out because it's zero? That's what I thought. Legislative services, that's, I don't know, it's 0.23. I think it's important that the records be updated, so I'm suggesting I would leave it in.
I think we have to. We've been putting this off for ages, and I know the time it takes to search stuff. I think we need to bite the bullet and go for it.
General consensus from everybody, leave it in. It's there. Fairmount Occupational Therapist, I think this is very important. I think we can't fill the position at 0.13 to fill it because all the rest of the money is there. I think that, to me, it's a no-brainer, but what's anybody else think? Everybody's in. External request, well, that was already approved. So we're back to the same two. We are talking about the new superintendent. Counselor Lichty.
I'd like to see that superintendent come back next year to us. I'm looking at this 6.7%. The townships have their own issues. You know, it's not an ideal cut, but I think we should do that.
Any other comments? Counselor Saunders?
I would support that. I think we need a chance to understand how the new team coming on and the effect that's going to have before we make another decision on staffing.
So we've heard a couple of comments. All favor of taking it out? I guess that's the direction. Okay, it's out. Economic Development, Community Development Officer. Any other comments, yay or nay? Councillor Greenwood Spears?
The Economic Development Officer, excuse me, is regarding building our infrastructure for economic development. It's not about grooming the trail and things of that nature or partnerships with that. This is completely separate. And this is in support of what we agreed in 2022, but never put the money towards it. So I think it's high time that it gets brought forward, and it impacts virtually everything that we've identified as our branding for Frontenac County.
Any other comments? I don't. Okay. Councillor Saunders.
Thank you. I'll go back to the comment that was made during Richard's presentation. If I understand it right, his best estimate is somewhere around 50% of his time is spent on managing the trail, give or take 10%, whatever. I would like to see that department explore possibilities to download some of that work to outside agencies and then come back to us whether, with a recommendation whether that can be done or not.
Because if that was done, that should free up 30% of his time or whatever. So would you like to see that before it's in or out? Or what? I see somebody twitching here beside me or? Mr.
I'll just
Galvin?
comment on this. So I actually need to clarify. I think the 50% of Richard's time is not just on the build of the trail. It's on the relationship building of the trail, which is not going to go away. That part, working with the ATV groups and, you know, talking to citizens out there and so on, that's still going to take a big part of his job. And also the manager of economic development's role is not necessarily to be on the ground. It's a regional position working with other adjacent counties. The role of the community development officer, I can tell you that Ms. Miller drives thousands of kilometers a month around Frontenac County, talking to businesses. We have seen, and again, it is a subjective thing. Economic development can be a very subjective thing. We can't guarantee how many jobs are going to be created, et cetera. But to build the relationships with the businesses in this community and have time to also bring people in who may want to come here, we are at a tipping point in terms of our staff resources. And that's, I mean, we asked last year, I understand it was a budget crunch. This year, we thought we have a more creative way of getting the funding over a 3-year period. But our advice is this is not a want, it's a need. And the trail, I mean, we can have discussions with the OTA, but we are building a high quality trail, and I would argue that it's the best quality trail in Eastern Ontario, and we want to keep doing that. And I don't know if EOTA can guarantee that. I honestly don't know. But this position is critical for us evolving over the next couple of years on the ground.
Warden Smith.
I just want to add to that, even if the EOTA does take part, they still have to discuss with somebody, which would be Richard. So it may reduce what he does, but it's not going to eliminate it. And the other point is that we as the small municipalities do not have economic development people. We have committees that talk about economic development, but we don't have them on the ground. So I see this as being the ability for this person to actually help us more, because there would be some time to do that. And we can't afford to hire an economic development person in our small municipalities. So I'm in favor of this. I think we need to do this if we're going to move forward.
I echo what Councillor Sarah or Warden Smith just said. I know there's going to be a request to us for a part-time economic development officer, and I don't see it happening.
This way you can get out of it.
Well, that's why I get part of it, yeah. But actually, it isn't going to hit until next year. So if we don't put the 43,000 away this year, they'll come back to us next year for 86. And that's 2/3 of a year, so they could start at the end of April. So they can hire in the first part of the year as opposed to hiring at the end of 2025. You know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's the long term is still there. Like I said before, we talk about it, but we don't do anything about it. The dollars are, I don't like increasing staff and I don't like the dollars, but I think it's time we actually did something.
Councillor Leonard.
Well, I think for $43,000 a year, we're kind of crazy if we don't move this ahead. We want to advance. We don't want to retreat on what we're doing. So I fully support it.
Okay, the only other comment I'm gonna make is I don't mind the plan, but I hate it when you try to put in so many things that why you need this person, that you're looking at housing, you're looking at this, you're looking at that. Those are all things that most of it we're not gonna have much control over. I don't have a problem. If you need the position to improve what we're doing and actually get things done, I'm more comfortable with that than trying to make the scope so broad to justify the position. Okay, so generally, are we leaving it in? Opposed? I could see where this is going. Jeez. That's down to me then.
Say yes. 43,000.
Okay. Let's go then. It still has to come back to county council, so. This is just whether we leave them in or not, it's coming back to county council. We've got the direction. The total is 5.78. If anybody is comfortable with that number, they don't live in my household, but I understand. Okay. If there's nothing else, is there? I'm sure
So,
there is.
no, there isn't. There's just a recommendation there. So that's moved by Counselor Lichty and seconded by Counselor Fowler, that council approve the 2025-2029 business plans as presented. And finally, that council include the following project proposals for inclusion in the 2025 draft budget deliberations. So for corporate services, there's the electronic document records management system. For planning and economic development, there is a community development officer and a population housing and employment projection. For Fairmount Home is the occupational therapist full-time, and for Frontenac Paramedics is the enhanced paramedic resource.
You need anything? Oh. All in favor of that list to move forward? Carried. Okay. And as you know, we have another short meeting.
At 12:30, Jeanette?
It's at 12:30.
Oh, at 12:30.
I believe we do have lunch, so.
Do we have anything else at this time, Madam Clerk?
Just a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Leonard, seconded by Councillor Warden Smith. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, staff. I know it's not easy, and I know that there's always some wants that don't happen, but it does take a lot of work. And I guess we're as close as we're gonna get for now. So thank you.
Meeting to order. We begin this gathering by acknowledging and celebrating these traditional lands as a gathering place of the first peoples and their ancestors who are entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. We do so respecting both the land and the Indigenous people who continue to walk with us through this world. Today, the county is committed to working with Indigenous peoples and all residents to pursue a united path of reconciliation. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof of any item on the special agenda today? Seeing none, our item of business is the amendment to the bylaw approving the application to expropriate lands for the purpose of the KMP Trail at part of lots 13 and 14, concession 10, Palmerston, Township of North Frontenac. And this is just the correction, not the issue that we need to discuss. Jeanette?
So the report's there just for council's information so that they understand why there is a bylaw on the floor. So we can just basically move straight to the adoption of the bylaws.
Okay, who wants to move this bylaw? Ron, seconded by Jerry. Be it resolved that given the mover to introduce the bylaw and that have been circulated to all members of County Council, and that the bylaws A and B be read a first and second time. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Third reading, moved by Nikki, seconded by Fred. Be it resolved that bylaws A and B be read a third time, signed, sealed, and finally passed this day, October 30th, 2024. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried.
And just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Moved by Ron, seconded by Nikki, that this meeting be adjourned. All those in favor?